It's Monday, March 31st. I'm Adam Walsh, and this is The Signal. Regardless of what the weather may or may not be doing, we are in a spring frame of mind here today because the spring issue of the Newfoundland Quarterly is upon us. The theme, water. So we're going to dive into those pages. Jump on in with us, folks. Full house here today. And as you listen, if you've got thoughts or questions, the text line is open today, 709-327-8206. Emails, thesignal@cbc.ca. You can also leave a voice message, 709-576-5260 for what we call the Signal line. Joan Sullivan, managing editor of Newfoundland Quarterly. How you doing?
Splashy intro, Adam.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I looked at the theme and thought, what kind of punny stuff can I try to do to get on into it? Sometimes it's eye roll worthy, other times a little less so. I don't know where I landed on that today. Tell us broadly before we so there's 4 other folks here in studio, but
Yes.
and we will get to them shortly.
Very exciting.
Yeah, it's great voices here today. Tell us a bit more about just the issue and what went into it.
The theme is water, written on water, and water can be interpreted many ways. We've got articles about shipwrecks. We've got articles about water coming out of faucets. We've got a memoir by Marjorie, who we'll be hearing from soon, about writing about her mother. So, of course, water, the beginning of life. We've opened it up as broadly as possible.
Water. And there's other themes, not for this issue, but there's other themes coming too, right?
We're kind of diving into the elements this year. We're going to do water, air, water, earth, fire, and air.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. All right. And a quick word as well before I introduce my guests on the nonfiction contest. And how did that work?
This was so exciting to us. We teamed up with Writers NL, and we sponsored the first creative nonfiction writing contest for Newfoundland and Labrador. You didn't have to be a resident of Newfoundland and Labrador to enter. You just had to be over 18. But the material had to have some connection to Newfoundland and Labrador. And so we put out the call. We had our deadline of the 10th of February. We got our jury together. We selected our prize winners, who are all here today, and they're all in the pages of the spring issue.
And how many folks, would you put out a call like this, how many submit?
We got over 30.
Oh, nice.
And we didn't know what to expect at all. And really, like 75% of them were really, really good, really, really good entries. It was a real nice quality of stuff. So one thing I'm hoping that people talk about when you get to them is I'd like to know how they heard about it, and how they responded to it, because we definitely want to do it again. We're thinking of doing it every 2 years.
All right, well, let's toss that question to them. All right, let me do a whip around here. We've got Christina Wells, first nonfiction contest winner, the third line of my haiku. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
And you're sharing a microphone because we invited so many people in here today. You're sharing with Jessica Richardson, who's wrote third nonfiction winner, wrote A House Downtown, right?
That's correct. And we're friends, so this is fine.
Yeah, exactly. We checked beforehand. It's like, okay, which of these people are friends? And then you get to share a mic. So excellent. Marjorie Doyle is here, who wrote Motherography on writing about your mom. Mm-hmm. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
And let me see, you've published how many books? 5 books so far, right? And one last year. Tell us about that book.
It's called Mary Foley, Mary Doyle, Unraveling a Mother's Secrets. And it is a memoir biography of my mother. And I tried to keep it about her, but I had to creep in. I'm a writer and I'm the narrator, so.
Yeah, and we're going to dig into that as well in today's show. And also here we've got Chris Peters, second nonfiction contest winner, Outside Into the World. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks.
Tell us about your piece.
My piece?
Yeah, just give us the Coles note, and then we'll dig into it after.
Sure. So it's all about an evening spent at the Cape Ray shipwreck is the very brief introduction.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. That could leave people wanting more, and we'll get to that. Okay, folks, so how'd you hear, like Joan said, how'd you hear about the contest, and what were your thoughts around submitting? Because, I mean, it's a big thing to put yourself out there and to submit a piece of work. Who wants to go first?
I can go.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, I hadn't submitted to the Newfoundland Quarterly before, and I'd been published by other magazines in the province, so Riddle Fence and Horseshoe. So I reached out to Joan actually via email and asked, how to go about this and what might she be looking for right now, kind of thing. And she sent me the little poster for it. Plus, of course, I saw it on Writers NL then, and Writers NL is an amazing resource, so encouraging
I agree.
for the writing community. So just amazing. So I saw it on there as well.
All right. So you saw it there, and then what happens?
Then what happens? Well, I go in and look at the word count and make sure that my essay is, I had to pare it down a bit. I think it's just under 3,000 is what mine ended up being, or 2,500, I think it was. But I like that process. I like having to pare it down, and it really helps crystallize the images and make it a little bit more straightforward. So I pared down the word count and then just sent it in.
All right.
Yeah.
Jessica, what about yourself?
Well, we have Susan in our little writing group. She's always sharing with the group places to submit, and she's very encouraging of us. Shout out to Susan. And I knew that this piece seemed very related, and I had actually wrote it and written it and submitted it a couple years before my first submission when I moved here, and it just wasn't ready then. So I'm really glad that I went back to it and revised, and that Susan shared this contest with me. Yes.
All right, so yours is called A House Downtown. Tell us about it.
So it's about when the day after I decided to divorce my husband, and I wanted to go, and I wanted to buy a house. That was something I had really wanted to do. And I contacted my realtor, and there was only one option in the location and price range. And so I just really quickly got that ball rolling. And so the piece is about, I guess, the risk one takes when they choose to settle. They're kind of rushed into it, in my case, and the risk factor of that. And maybe there are some parallels to the failed marriage.
Throughout. Yes. Christina, tell us about the third line of my haiku.
Okay, so I'm a mom of 3 kids, and part of my creative output while in the busyness of having kids was taking pictures, and I really loved it. So anyway, so I have this collection of my kids swimming underwater because I always find it really a haunting experience.
Yeah.
There's something strange and beautiful, and so I have this collection. I used to dream about having them, sort of exhibiting them somehow. I still might, who knows? But I have these. So then when I took a nature writing class with Rob Findley at Memorial, looking for things to write on, I'm like, okay, I'm going to dive into this feeling I have. So really on paper, it's an exploration of a mother's connection to a child and sort of that, the gulf a little bit between when you birth a child and that you're so wholly close to, and then that feeling you get when they move away, sort of diving into that tension.
Yeah. And I was thinking, like, reading your piece too, like the thought when you have, and I mean, I don't have kids, but just thinking of someone, the minute they're in that water and just, it can be beautiful, but at the same time it's water, and it's, it can be really scary.
And I have my own fears around, like I grew up on the Bay of Exploits where Dad would just stop the boat out in the middle of the water, big, dark, black, vast expanse, and say, jump off. And so I would, and I remember that scrambly feeling of having to get back up into the boat because it just felt so large and so vast. So I think seeing my daughter, Sadie, and my other kids in the water, it's bringing up a lot. It's like triggering my own fears, my own connections, and my own grappling with being a mother and being connected to her.
Chris, how'd you hear about the contest?
So I originally submitted quite a bit longer piece to Newfoundland Quarterly. So I have been published in the past, but it's predominantly been in Ontario or the mainland, and predominantly in my role as a teacher. So I write a lot about outdoor education, those kinds of things. So I was very keen to bring that to Newfoundland because I thought the shipwreck was Newfoundland specific.
Yeah.
And then just as chance, my dad and mom lived in Grey River in the 70s, and Dad built a sailing dory. So I had this rather unwieldy piece about the Cape Ray shipwreck in my dad's dory. And I got a pleasant reply, which is, we're full up, we're getting ready for an issue, but there's this contest, which I forgot all about. And then my wife sent me hey, there's this contest coming up. And then I went back and reworked and removed my dad's stuff, but that's how the piece kind of came together.
Hey, sometimes it has to happen.
It does, yeah. It was a lot going on trying to like make it all come together.
All right, then tell us about the piece that ended up in the issue.
Sure.
Right, 'cause you teased it, but let's get into it.
So my family and I went car camping across to New Brunswick. So I'm from New Brunswick originally. And my wife is the curator of history up at the Rooms. So she'd been consulted about the Cape Ray shipwreck. So we were on the way to the Cheeseman's Provincial Park. And she was like, we definitely have to go out and see this shipwreck. And I'm like, sure. It was like, and I get to this in my piece, it's just like, it was one of those days when you got adolescent kids and they don't want to be doing what their parents are doing. And so we're all kind of moving out towards the shipwreck. And my wife was determined, like, she's going out, and the kids were less interested in the whole experience. And then I found it, the shipwreck itself, like, very moving. I wasn't really prepared for why or how, and that's really kind of what it got into. And then cutting across that is my girls saying, like, when are we going already? And I'm just trying to, like, these experiences you have as adolescents where your parents are like, this is really important. And they're kind of like, yeah, but we could go back and play cards in the camper kind of thing. So,
yeah, and you're like having a moment, right?
Yeah,
like you're there, you're looking at this piece of a shipwreck, and you can see like the human interaction of like years and years and years gone by that went into it. And you're a history teacher, but then your kid's like, I don't want to be here.
Yeah. Very much so, and I'd had like a couple moments, so I'd speak to that. Like there were herons, which I hadn't expected, and I didn't know they lived here. And I was like, "Wow, this is so neat!" And I was having a whole moment, and my youngest was like, "When are we going?" and then we got to the shipwreck, but they do speak to it, and like they had their own experience of it. It's just I'm not sure it was as profound as I like. Wow, that was moving.
Well, and it might be one of those that it becomes profound later on.
Yeah,
right.
We can hope, right?
We can hope. There's always that
they
hope.
Come back to it. Yeah, that's always what. Because I had the same experience when I was younger, and then you look back and you're like, oh, that was neat. I'm glad, or whatever the word you're going to use, but it was more important than I thought it was.
When did the moment start for you, though? Because when you're looking at this thing that's kind of washed up, that's been unearthed, when did that moment, like for you as a person and history teacher, be like, oh, this is, I don't know, I'm being impacted here?
Yeah, like just stepping onto the beach and seeing they had pulled the pieces, like so the shipwreck had been cut up into pieces and drawn up on the beach, and just the size of the timbers that were being, I wasn't really prepared for that, and like so the scale of everything was out of proportion to what I thought. Somehow in my head, like wooden sailing ship planks would be much thinner, and it would be like a much smaller footprint, and it was this very large, huge timbers, and like. And my father and grandfather were both woodworkers, so I was kind of like, I have some, I'm not going to say expertise, but like a knowledge of like what woodworking looks like. So I was blown away by the amount of work that went into putting this together.
Marjorie, for yourself, what's it like to research or to put together a book on your mom? I know this is the piece that you wrote on motherography, or if you want to kind of just start by saying, what is a motherography?
I can't tell you if I heard that word before or if I coined it. I honestly don't know. But I take it to be, or I mean it to be, the writing about one's mother, like historiography or biography, etc. It's difficult for all kinds of reasons, technical reasons, writerly reasons, and human reasons. But it's, in my case, I felt it was worth doing, and I'm pleased I did it.
Yeah, you really had a wall when you were trying to do that, didn't you?
I had a lot of walls, yeah.
Why?
They're all down now, Joe.
But why? What walls come up when you're writing about
Well,
your
first
mom?
of all, you're so many. I mean, I don't want to hog the show.
No,
Person has lived a long time. If you're going to write about somebody who lived nearly 90 years, that's a problem of how you're going in and how you're going to approach it. Another wall is the recognition that the person had relationships with many people besides you. So there are 30 people who could write a book about my mother. So you're aware of those divisions, those kinds of walls. And then the actual what's around yourself about how willing you are to look hard and peer deeply at that person and at myself and at the relationship. So this is what you mean by the walls, Joan?
Well, you wrote how you kind of stopped. You had to make decisions about what was fair game, what was not.
Exactly. And each one of those, well, commonly called writer's block, I guess. I think of writer's block as more in fiction, and you have an idea and it's not going somewhere and you don't know where it's going. I think in nonfiction, a block is different. In this case, and I'd written lots of nonfiction before and I'd never experienced writer's block.
Yeah.
But in this case, the block had to do not so much with the writing as with what I was attempting to do.
I mean, this is the part that I completely understand in a way, right? Although I've not written about my mom and I haven't, or yours or whatever, but for journalism, when you're thinking of like, okay, what are the facts we're going to put into this? What matters? What is actually pertinent to this story we're trying to tell? What is fair? What is not fair? Do I have internal biases with this that I need to kind of wrestle with? Like, where is all of this in this piece? And for journalism, it could be a 2-minute TV piece, 600 to a couple thousand word piece. But then to think of all of that and then to have a familiar, like that kind of a connection, in my mind, that makes it so much more difficult because of that family responsibility you put on yourself for writing.
You're right.
But you got through it.
I got through it.
How do you feel about it now?
I feel pleased.
Yeah.
I've spoken to a lot of people about the book. A lot of people have approached me. Everyone has a mother. And many people have relationships with their mothers that were perfect and less than perfect and not so good at all. People are fairly open to talking about it once they've read somebody else reading about their experience. I've spoken to a lot of book clubs, and I'm amazed at how free and comfortable people suddenly feel, perhaps triggered by the book, about having that kind of discussion. So that has made me feel happy.
Yeah, I think there's something about when someone goes somewhere, other people feel more comfortable joining them.
Maybe.
Right? Because you're out there.
And explaining the process of going there. You know, when you know that there's something she kept private and you're going to tell us, and you talk about that.
There's a lot of detective work in any biography and or journalism. And in the case of when you're writing about family, you partly have the impetus of the detective where you want to dig and you want to find out and you want to know. But because it's a personal story, you also have the exact opposite reaction. I have to stop. I don't want to know. I don't need to know. I think that's what you're getting at, Joan.
Yeah, you're like, oh, didn't really need to find that part out because it's about a parent. Oops. And then you move on, or then you wrestle with what to do with it. Because once you have it in your head, it's there.
I have a bit of a question actually about writing process.
Sure.
So you guys all heard about the contest, but you already had material. So I think this might be a useful tip for people listening, that you already had material that you're working on, that you tried. I think you all said that you had tried one thing with it before and you ended up cutting it. I found that interesting that you had stuff there that you do. This is something that you do as a writer, is you submit to these competitions.
Yeah, this is an interesting question for me because, and also speaking of writer's block with creative nonfiction and process, especially when you start it and you're feeling some type of way about the people involved in the piece. For me, when I initially wrote it, it was like a coping mechanism, and maybe I was my first draft, I was quite a lot more saucy about my ex-husband in that draft, but since then, I've really softened to him and softened those parts and made it more about my experience being independent and accepting the things that I can't change in the house and him. And since this has been published, we have become friends again. So I would write it even less saucy now, but it's all good.
But that's one of the interesting things about your writing, though, when you kind of pull that trigger of putting it out into the world. Because if it was the initial one, the sauciest of the versions, that would have been out there.
I would be so embarrassed. And that's the thing about writing and being published, in the agony of not being able to take anything back once it's out there. So I'm so thankful it didn't make it the first time. Wish I maybe had another chance to edit, but no, it's all good.
No, I think this one landed well. This is like everyone understands. Like you're writing about your house, your divorce. Like there's going to be there's issues involved, and
I have to be very mindful of the people I'm writing about and what you say about making it fair. And I want to write so that if they were to read it, they would be like, "Yeah, that's fair," or be flattered. But still, even so, I'm so nervous about sharing my writing in general and about when it's about others, just in case they find it, if they feel too exposed. Because I did not ask for their consent. I just did it, and I didn't expect that it would turn out to be published in this Canada's longest running magazine. Is that
the longest running print publication, still with its original title?
That's amazing. Yeah, that's cool. Big deal.
Right, so everyone you're writing about should feel good about themselves in a way.
I hope so. It's all true and fair. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and fairness can change. Like how you feel about fairness in like January, it might be a little bit different in June, but it's still at that point in time, that was fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I stand by everything.
See, there you go. Yep. Anyone else on just what Joan was at the
process
with the process? Yeah.
Yeah, like I find, as a writer, that's like the most interesting part, right? Like the aspect of pulling a story together, trying to find the right words and the right way to put it in the way that it works best, like trying to present something. And, you talked about writer's block. Like I go through long periods where I'm not writing, like I'm journaling, I guess. I'm jotting stuff down, but I'm not necessarily actively writing. But then coming out of Cape Ray, for instance, it was like stuck in my head. Like there was like a need to write something down about it. And then the initial draft versus, I don't know how many iterations it went through before I submitted it, but it was a lot, right? And it's one of the things I always tell my students, right? Like your first draft is probably not going to be very good, and that's okay. And you can see they struggle with but I just wrote it, so it should be good.
Yeah, it's like, sir, it was so much work. I don't want to do it again. I mean, that's how I feel about everything I do, right?
It is a lot of work, but that's for me, I find that's the most fun is like going back. Fun and I don't know. A lot of work run away.
Writing is
satisfying.
rewriting.
That's a better word. Yeah.
Satisfying. All right. So, how often do you write? Like, how does it tell? Like, you journal? Like, how often is this process part of your life?
So, I keep a journal pretty regularly, daily. And I'll go through periods where I don't write much, and then school gets busy or life is busy or whatever. But and then I'll go through long periods where it's like all the time. I can be writing lots, and then. I think someone asked about like how often I submit. Like when I see stuff and I think I have something to offer, I will submit stuff. But I probably edit myself and be like, I don't think I could pull that together. Those kinds of things. So,
do you ever find notions just kind of like for me? There's stuff that I'll think about, and it's like oftentimes I'll try to turn it into like a show, right? Because this is some kind of an outlet for me. 5 days a week, I have this that I can help try to have voices in to do what we're doing now. But other times things just fly by. I'm like, that could have been. Oh no, it's gone. Like, what about the rest of you?
Christina, I was really, my ears perked up when you mentioned working with Robert Finley.
Yeah.
I've had the incredible benefit of being in a couple of his courses too, and it's amazing what he can help you bring out of yourself.
Yeah. He's so generous. And so in that nature writing course, he had us write 5 essays, and so I have others. But and he offered to work with us really closely on one of the 5 that we wrote. And so I picked this one actually back then to work on with him. So we sat in his office, and he's such an amazing thinker as well, and just a thoughtful, he has so much insight. So it went from, writing all about my daughter Sadie's swimming to, and I was focused on that sort of haunting feeling. And then with him, we discussed also that feeling of uplift, also this, that the tether is still there, and that watching her is an offshoot of me watching and sort of living vicariously through her in a way. All of that and really good thinking came through discussions with him, and I was so grateful. And it was through that opportunity in that class that I've then sort of, since moving here, I've really gotten into writing more seriously. So I'm always done it, but emerging now in my middle age. So I'm so grateful. Yeah.
What does Sadie think of it?
Sadie, I got her consent before coming here to be able to say her name on air, and that was important to me. And the whole way along, even before I submitted it to you, Joan, I asked Sadie, like, making sure, because I wrote this and then, she was younger, and are you still okay with it? Are you still okay now? So that's really important to me. She's in there. She finishes the essay. She's an amazing writer in her own right, and she's in arts and letters this year, for example. Like she's, so for years she's been practicing writing. So I got her to write when I was doing swimming. I said, hey, just write me a little bit about what do you think about swimming? Like, what are your fears and your joys and whatnot? So she finishes the essay, and when she read it first, she said, oh, I can tell you really love me, Mom. So that was super sweet.
Oh my God, that's so sweet.
That is, you don't, I think sometimes you may not know what kind of compliments are going to come when you write something, if any, right? But then to have that after such a lovely piece.
That's the best one.
Yeah. When you're writing about your house, I just think of both your pieces of work, right? So one talking about a shipwreck, which is history, right? And touching and tactile, and then thinking of who touched things before. But then when you move into a new home, you want to just talk to me about some of the, in that life moment of why you moved in, but what you discovered with it. Like, what's it like discovering a new home, especially an older one in the downtown with all of its
Quirks.
Quirks.
Yeah.
No right angles. Not
Yeah.
a single right angle. I
There
have a
were so
downtown
many
too.
doors. So, Christina lent me the saw that that never ended up using to try to level out the doors that wouldn't shut, but it's fine now. I've accepted it. I just didn't want to do that work. But what was the question?
I think about the history, because there are parallels with history, right? Of like moving into a new home, other people had it before you, and it can be when it's a 100-year-old home like yourself. That can be generations of few generations of people.
Yes.
So what's the process like of what you're thinking about when you move into that, as you discover the no right angles and everything else, but then the thoughts of like the people that were there before you?
Yes. So I was very concerned about being rushed and having this being my only option and all of these red flags, so to speak. And my realtor, who's so wonderful, reassured me. But of course, she's my realtor, but she ended up being very trustworthy in the end. But the more I would dig into my home and do a couple renos, my duplex neighbor also did a full gutting of her half, and she was the one who told me that the house was built with the cheapest possible materials, and kind of made me a little concerned for my future in there. But so far it has held up really well, and I'm looking in the crawl spaces and I see some little pencil marks, and with the house the window that was built just so I could see Signal Hill and a lot of different touches. I just feel like a lot of care went into it. Maybe not professionally, but it seems to have held up pretty well. But yeah, there were a lot of concerns, definitely.
Yes, I used to have a downtown house, so yeah. I understand. Yeah, you're like, is this thing? It's been around this long. Is it going to stick around?
The plumbing is my main concern, because I had an issue with the plumbing, and then the guy came over and he's like, what? The professional did not do this. This is not right. This is not to code. You're going to be in a world of pain when this happens. And I'm like, what do you mean? But I'll cross that bridge when I get there. Bridge, water.
I read your piece. I was like, because we live in a downtown house. It's 130 years old. And we've been in the renovation for the last 4 years. And it's all this ridiculous stuff that's kind of thrown into walls, and the stubby beer bottles and the cigarette butts, that why that got pushed in behind.
Yeah, I have no insulation.
Yeah, or seaweed insulation is what we found.
Seaweed?
So, seaweed insulation.
I haven't heard that one before. I've heard lots of evening telegrams, but not seaweed insulation.
It's seaweed insulation. It had the silver backing, and then it had seaweed. So I think it was a product at some point. I'm not.
Wow.
Yeah.
But we definitely pulled it out of our walls. So. It was a thing somewhere, at least in our house.
But then, so for yourself as a history teacher, what's that? What are you thinking of as you're doing this? Other than like, well, this is interesting, but like, yeah, is there a deeper, like, did you have a deeper kind of a thought process around it?
If you allow yourself in like the moments when you can step back from the renovation, like, wow, this is like a lot of history and we're touching that in the moment. When you're like pulling out a cast iron plumbing system that no longer works, there's a lot of other words that you might use to describe the situation. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. but I certainly recognize, like, I think you spoke to like having to live with the way things are for the time being and like finding the beauty in what it is. And I think that is the reality everyone without and, deep pockets has to do in the renovation process. Mm-hmm. Like, we're going to live with this for the time being.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be livable. And the hot water, that was new, a new upgrade before I got in the hot water tank, so that's perfect. The water pressure is great. I can take a nice bath. That's where I have a lot of my ideas, in the bath. So speaking of writing process, my voice memo, I take voice notes.
I find the shower helps for my ideas. When I step out, I'm like, wait, where'd they go? But in the moment, they're good. I swear.
You can get one of those waterproof boards on your shower that you can write your notes down in your shower. They exist.
I should get one of those. Yeah. All right, Mo. There's already a discussion about the length of showers in my house. They're like, what are you doing? I'm like, now you have scrolling out some more notes. It's my process. It's important. You're listening to The Signal. I'm Adam Walsh. Today we're talking about Newfoundland Quarterly. The theme is water. It's the spring issue, right? I've got folks here in the studio to chat all about it. If you've got thoughts for us, email us, thesignal@cbc.ca. The text line is open, 709-327-8206, or you can leave us a voice message on the Signal line, 709-576-5260. Here with me in studio, Joan Sullivan, managing editor of NQ. We also have Christina Wells, Jessica Richardson, Marjorie Doyle, and Chris Peters. Joan, a question for yourself, and we've talked about this before, but the fact that you're continuing to print in a time when printing is not everyone's printing, right? Talk to me about the importance of this, and I'm just curious about what the rest of you think of the importance of still being able to contribute to something so tactile and like they're beautiful issues with art and like the written word in it. But I'm just curious around your thoughts on this.
Yeah, it's very important to us that we are in print. We do have an online component that complements the issue, but it's never replicating what's in the issue. I believe in a magazine as a beautiful print object, and I think people like to hold things when they read, and I think people like to give something to people. Like, here's, you guys will have your magazines and you can show your friends, like, look, and you'll turn the pages and see the issue. And it's, there's so many things pushing against print. We lost our printer in the middle of doing our fall issue last year. We did.
It's terrible.
Yeah, and now there's no newspaper here.
Yes, right. So the Telegram was printed, now no longer a print issue, and then this led to because it was the same
Saltwire,
same printer, and so now you've got someone printing for you.
We are with modern printing now, and they are in Newfoundland, which is very important to us. So that I'm glad we weren't trying to print newspaper because you can't do that in Newfoundland anymore. And in a broader issue, it was not that long ago that our lives depended on reliable local news. Our lives depended on reliable local news. And we don't have that now. I'm sorry, I shouldn't completely dismiss CBC Radio because you guys are fabulous. But I feel like you do one thing, like you break the news and you have a certain kind of conversation, and the Quarterly can take a little bit of a more living history, an assessment of it, an interpretation of it,
Well, which is each issue, each theme, right? Like you said, it's each theme, it's an interpretation of everyone under this one theme of history, everything from, and you can have from fiction to nonfiction, and there's so many great pieces in every month. But then for me to think of a world now without that and the void that it would have with this type of a publication, that's a big thing. Anyone else on that?
Yeah, well, it's making me think, I think it was Margaret Atwood who said, everybody always wants a novel, at least in the bathtub. You know, you want to have something to hold. But I don't know if that's actually that true anymore. I mean, people use their Kobos or their phones, I'm sure, or whatnot. But I feel like it's a human issue, and what you're saying, Joan, about like holding the thing. I think that's really important to us on a really felt, like, memory level. And Chris, your essay actually, where we shared essays, by the way, before we came, but so that, you know, where you touch that wood and you're contemplating like how I'm touching this thing that somebody made that echoes and memories from something somebody actually did here, sort of conflates time and brings it down into like, I'm a part of this world. This is important. I can hold this thing. I can share it. And that it means something to me as well. And plus the voices, like I know downtown at Eastern Edge, they've had zine workshops, for example, which strikes sort of 80s, 90s chord with me, you know, and everybody is just publishing and putting their voice out there. And I think that's really important for community building. And I think it'd be a shame to lose it. Yeah.
Yeah, community building in a time of talking about, well, even though we're kind of hyper-connected, we're also separate because of the online world and what that brings, as opposed to years prior when there was more kind of community. Thoughts?
Yes, this is the most like thrilling part of it, that it's published in something like real and respected and shareable. And like I have a little book box on Pilot Hill and Gower, so you can put it in there. And my friends in BC have asked, like, where can we get it? And I said, I'll mail it to you. And I just think like the message really is the medium. It'll touch them differently if they're going physically reading it, and then they'll read the other things too that they might not if it were digital. And for me, like, this is my first real publication other than the Paragon Student Press. And before that, I'd self-publish my own zine in BC, like annually, just 10 issues over 10 years or so. It was like anonymous, it's just silly things. But I just felt this compulsion to get it out there, things I want to say in my musings. It's kind of cringy now, but that's fine. This is my process. And I just love that I have those physical copies in my creation that reflect who I was at that time. I like feeling understood, so it's with the risk. There's the risk of not being able to edit it after the fact, but the reward is great. So I love that it's physical.
Marjorie, what about yourself?
Well, I love magazines, especially good ones. Joan does an excellent job. It's a pleasure. It's a treat. I get it automatically through a subscription participation in the Newfoundland Historical Society. It's something to look forward to have. And I love magazines. I love good magazines, and I love the Quarterly. And knowing that I've published before in the Quarterly, not recently, but long ago, knowing you're part of something that has been good since 1901, that really matters to me. Hope I have the date right, do I, Joan?
Yes. Yeah.
And it's great. It's physically beautiful. The quality of the writing is great. The variety of the writing and the themes and the topics. And in terms of the physicality of it and being able to send it, it's so deliciously mailable. And I have friends lots of places, including, say, New Zealand. If there were a few things I want to tell her time to time about Newfoundland, I can send a link, but like... What's a link? People send me links. I might open it. I might not. I might like it. I might not. There's certainly no visual aspect to it. But I can mail a friend in Spain or a friend in New Zealand the Newfoundland Quarterly fairly easily, and they are thrilled to get it. Not just because they're keeping in touch with them, but because it's a beautiful magazine.
Another thing with your piece, too, was we were able to commission illustrations to go with your work. So that was the illustrator looked through the text and picked out several possible images, and you had a little discussion there. But that felt like such a magazine-y thing to do, you know?
Well, for me, and I've published a lot and over a long period of time, I think it's the first time I've ever had a piece illustrated. And if obviously you're sending to literary magazines across the country, they don't have illustrations. They're not going to be illustrated. But when Joan said to me, how would I feel about being illustrated, I was absolutely thrilled. I haven't seen them yet. So call me tomorrow. I might say, oh, no, I hate it.
I can show you.
No, it's okay.
Live reaction here on the spot. Chris, what about yourself?
Yeah, I think it is like one of those cool things. Like my grandfather had a printing press in St. John, New Brunswick, and I remember like the smell of the ink and the machines kind of going back and forth. Like It's like a vivid childhood memory. But I speak to my students a lot about living history, and you can kind of see their eyes glazing over. But like I think holding something from the past and like being able to flip through it, like that does hold that history and like speaks to a certain time, and it's easier to immerse yourself in that. So like the magazine is here and present today, but it'll be when you look at it a few years from now, or when I read it and I'm looking at different pieces, like I'll have a different reaction, and I'll remember perhaps this very moment, and like it just speaks to a larger
point and place in time.
Yeah.
Right. And then you're also part of, from 1901, right? All these other people over the years, in the changing face of Newfoundland and Labrador, the communities, and just to think, like, Joan, how many people would this be? Like thousands.
Yeah, it would be. I mean, we try and commission work from over 70 people a year.
Wow, that's amazing and excellent.
We try, yeah.
That's so important.
Yeah.
So then what do you think about the responsibility that you have in this long line from 1901 until now? Not to
John
put any pressure on you, but, what do you think about the weight?
No, I try not to think about the weight. I try to think of it as a living conversation. Yeah. I know how very lucky I am to have this job and this work. So, yeah, no weight.
No way. One issue at a time, or in this case, but I mean, like for this year, you've got the thought. What was the process of talking about the themes for this year as you're trying to break that down?
That's the editorial advisory committee.
Yeah.
So it's just lots of stuff comes out of there. Yeah, yeah. And sometimes somebody will send in a piece, and it's just so good that we'll think, okay, we're going to build a theme around that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now you guys are now have introduced yourselves to the quarterly. So the difference in, I'm going to speak for Marjorie now, because of course she can't articulate anything, but you wrote this for us. You didn't have this on the go, because Marjorie just emailed and said, would you like a piece on this? And I said, absolutely. She said, how long? And I said, however long. And then, so she did that, so that's another way, that's another kind of writing process that when you're...
But that's another reason why it's great to have a good magazine. And the idea was, having written the book, I realized I had so much thought about the process and the idea of it, and that I was really eager to write about that. And it's nice to know I'm going to write about something and there's a possible opportunity. I mean, Joan has the editorial power to say yes or no, and the discrimination to say yes or no. But at least I know that, okay, I can write this piece, or I can query to see if she's interested in a piece on this subject. And then, of course, you have the impetus and the focus, and I know then it is going to appear in print. And it was great for me because as a writer, I got to write about writing.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, I mean, it's such an interesting, so for folks who read your book and then to read that, it's such an interesting companion piece, right? To look at the processes and the thought processes of your writing and what you wrestled with and what your thoughts were, right? And even the questions like, am I a reliable narrator if I'm writing about my mom? All of that is really fascinating to me.
Yeah, I think too that the first piece you ever did for us, or since I was there, was about your mom teaching the Mother Superior how to drive.
I thought that piece was pulped later. Shredded. No, I'm joking. Yes, I did write that long ago.
Yeah, no, great image. Yeah, there was some trouble ensued. I believe there was a mishap.
Well, the RNC may be listening, so can we move on to something?
All those years later. What do you folks think, when you think of a theme, like the theme of water through this issue, but then where we live in Newfoundland and Labrador, I think it is something that's on our mind a fair bit, right? What are your thoughts around this theme and just what it can mean to us as Newfoundlanders and Labradorians for your own writing and what water can where it can kind of creep into things?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's everywhere. It's like for me, I grew up, like I was saying before, on the Bay of Exploits.
Yeah.
I write about that a lot. I write about Lawrence's Harbor a lot, which is where our cabin is. And I guess it's just imprinted on me,
I mean, these three You guys didn't know the theme was water.
No, we
and
actually didn't know.
All of your pieces have water in them.
Yeah. So the ocean, obviously, and the whole history of that with like sailing and whatnot and boats. But also for me, you brought it up earlier, I think Joan or someone did, about motherhood, birthing.
So she's writing about her mother and you're writing about your daughter.
Exactly. So that's another really big theme that I'm sensing here, right? So, yeah.
And I increased my home insurance coverage to cover more for water damage.
There's so much there.
Yeah, so much.
I always find from living here, when I've traveled around and like lived in other places, if I wasn't near the water, it kind of spoke to me more than when I was near it, because it felt like there was always an absence.
Well, I lived in
life.
BC, in Vancouver, BC for a long time, and people are always like, why so far? And I'm like, well, it has to be an ocean. I just could never imagine living landlocked somewhere. But it's beautiful there too, but I just always need the ocean close by. Yeah.
Anyone else on that? Chris, thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think living here, like the ocean kind of informs everything, even when you don't realize it. So when you go somewhere else and you can't smell the ocean, like you said, there's like a marked absence there. And then, but then like when in Cape Ray, for instance, just like, you know, when I was there, just like the wildness of the place, but then also the human history. So it's easy to kind of look at that place and be like, wow, there's an absence of, but there was a whole lived history there, and trying to tap into that and the way that the ocean was used compared to how we use it now. I think that's fascinating to me, looking at it from a history, but like the lived tactile thing of, you know, fishing and transporting goods all by sail ship and all that. That's, to me, it's fascinating. So.
I find a lot of times when I walk around downtown St. John's, I'll think about who was there before, what developed this place. You walk into like the Crow's Nest in downtown St. John's, right? World War II officers' pub. There's a periscope there from a German U-boat from the war. There's all this World War II, and I just think of the kind of like the ghosts that will haunt the place. And then when I was reading your piece, it's the same thing, right? Like who put it together, who sailed it, what happened to them, what were the impacts, and then you all these years later with your family on a beach, right? Like having your own moment. How do you take that and then try to put that across to kids when you're teaching history? Because that's the stuff, right? For me, that's what makes it interesting. Thinking who touched this, who did this, who stepped here.
Right. So I try to get my kids outside. Like, so that's kind of how my piece ends, like stepping outside into the world. That's how you get into living history. And we were talking about Rob Finley, whose daughter went to the school I teach at, and he donated a beehive, which we now incorporate into like our lessons. So it's just like one more layer.
Lots of connections here.
Lots of connections.
Welcome to Newfoundland and Labrador.
But like that's how I try to bridge it over to make it meaningful for the students.
Joan, what do you think?
About water?
Yeah.
I mean, it literally defines our experience, you know. That surrounds us, that's for sure.
But even when it hasn't been like the theme, I mean, water is ever present in the Quarterly.
Yeah, I mean, it would be transportation, it would be in songs, it would be, no getting away from it, I would say. Being an island and all.
Yeah.
You know.
I've always found water kind of threatening because I've had a few near-death experiences in water. And one of the reasons I moved from Vancouver Island to here was because I thought it was better for the future climate disasters here to be living here because of the cliffs and the land height, and there was a lower risk of tsunami.
Yeah, because there's like, granted, yes, the tsunami has hit. There was one that hit here, but there's a bigger fear of it. I mean, when I used to go to the West Coast in the Navy, that was always on my mind. Earthquakes and tsunami. But it was always on my
it's
mind.
Ground level. Like when that huge earthquake comes through Cascadia, like Vancouver Delta, they're at ground level and it's just gonna liquefy.
Yeah,
it's scary.
It was a few years ago. I think it was, when was that? 17 or 18. The New York Times put out an article where they analyzed what is actually going to happen step by step in the Lower Mainland.
I read that.
And after I read that article, I used to visualize the path of the water because I had young kids. I'd be like, okay, it's going to come in. It's going to hit Vancouver Island, and then, okay, it might come in through downtown, but is it going to come up to East Van? I'm not sure if it'll make it that far. But you're literally tracking that tsunami and what would happen. So it's very felt, and the threat of it as well.
Yeah, the big one.
The big one.
That's the title of the article.
That's
I remember vividly.
Yeah.
On the 5th year of the Fukushima nuclear disaster and earthquake, the 5th anniversary of that tragedy, I was up in the area in Japan and touring the damage that was there, and there was something that sticks out. It was the what was at one point a light pole that if you just pick a flower and the flower comes off. So I looked at it, and the metal was kind of twisted over because the tsunami just took it, right? And then at the time we're still looking at homes, the bottom floors were just gone, still ripped to the studs, and it's like this imprint. And now I live down near Kitty Vitty, but then I look at the cliffs, like you're saying, and I'm just like, okay, I'm just like, it's part of the thought process a lot for me after kind of going through there. So yeah.
And I did the sea rise calculator online before I moved here.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're gonna be fine.
All right. Good. Well, all right. With 5 minutes left, on that note, well, thank you. With 5 minutes left, I am curious now. If we've talked about your work in this in the Quarterly. We've talked about the theme. What else are you working on, or are there any thoughts that are out there, like the future? Like, and you don't have to be working on anything, but is there, or it could be a notion too. Like, where are you with your writing right now these days?
So, well, for me, I'm finishing up my master's at Memorial. I'm doing a creative thesis. So I just sent the rough draft of my poetry manuscript to Michelle Porter this morning.
Cool.
So terrifying and amazing, and I'm so happy to have it started, that process. And then I'm also writing, I am writing a novella / novel, which is also, the setting is Lawrence's Harbor, actually, Bay of Exploits. So that's happening for me. So I got a lot on the go, trying to carve out the time to do it.
I think Christina, Jessica, yourself?
Yes, I'm writing a lot. I just find it so hard to talk about it. But the last year, I've been writing more than in my entire life. So I'm on a roll. And I finished, I just graduated MUN, and I wrote an academic satire called The Absurd Degree. So I'm just expanding that a little and see who wants to publish it. If not, I'm going to publish it myself. I had an impulsive thought that I could learn to publish bookbind. So I bought a bookbinder on Amazon for $90, and it came, and it's just one of those dinky little plastic pamphlets. It's not what I meant at all. I think I have to invest thousands of dollars.
I mean, or you could just, issue a series of little pamphlets.
I want it to be a beautiful piece. I want to see if there's somebody local who could be wanting to learn how to do this too, and make something really beautiful. Money's no object. It is, but I will pay if anybody wants to learn how to find books. But yeah, and then I just finished a novella about my cats, as I was having I don't want to talk about my writing anymore.
You've shared tons.
Just move on.
Marjorie, what about yourself?
I've just finished a chapter for a book coming out in the mainland soon. It's about women. I think it's called The Call of the Heart, Women of Vision, Faith, and something.
Yeah.
And the chapter I wrote was about a woman here in Newfoundland, or she's long dead.
Yeah.
Her name was Agnes Sesk. She was from Fairyland, and that's the most recent writing I've done.
Okay.
And for the moment, I'm in literally the think phase. I am thinking of something, a very specific something, but it will be a difficult something, so I want to take a long time to see if I can.
Suss it out. Chris?
So I spoke to my dad, built a sailing dory, and I have a binder from 1976 or something that he had in Grey River, which includes all the receipts of the wood. It's a ridiculous document because I think the wood cost $100 shipped up from New York. It was it's crazy, the numbers when you compare it to today. But I would like to explore that. And so he built a sailing dory, and then they left river, and he dismantled that, and he made a few other wooden boats through his life. And just as we were talking about water, I realized a lot of my writing has, in some way, shape, or form, been on canoeing, kayaking. The water has informed a lot of it. So,
Joan, next issue, where are we at?
Can I mention a couple of things that are in this one?
Oh, yes, please. Yeah, don't toss it out. You got 35 seconds.
Okay. Andrew Hawthorne who we know, has done a fabulous graphic art piece on how his dog, who is the cutest thing in the world, and everyone is going to want a dog exactly like his, knows that water comes out of the faucet. We have a review of Douglas Welburn Goff's new poetry collection, Island. It's very significant. And we've got, what else have we got there? A portfolio from the Bear Need residency. So this is Sharon Pippi's family have repurposed their family store into a dual studio in Bear Need. And Isla Kellerman was the artist there. So it's a portfolio of her work. And she's also talking about what it meant to her to have the opportunity for that residency. And now she's moving to Newfoundland. So that's how we get them.
And the theme for the next issue, just remind me? Earth. All right, folks.
June 16th.
June 16th. Well, I'll see you come this summer, or almost summer, Joan. Thanks, folks, for this.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, everyone. We're right up against it for time today. Thanks for everything, for listening. And tomorrow, Federal Election Show. We have a parent panel for you. You will hear what some parents are thinking about and what they want federal leaders to know about what matters to them when it comes to voting in the upcoming federal election. Cheers.